Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started here in about, what do we have? 3 more minutes. So 3-minute warning, and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right, welcome everybody to today's session. Possibly welcome back. Hopefully you were able to join us for the past 2 days. If not, welcome. So my name is Josh Brothheim. I'm going to be leading today's session. I have my peer Odell, who's going to be handling the chat. And as we've done previously, we're going to do a certification class today. So today's class is, hopefully you're here for, Cloud SIEM administration. So yesterday we did Cloud SIEM fundamentals. The day before that we did cloud security and analytics. And so today is administration, focusing on administration of the system, getting the data in and doing things with it. And so we're going to go through some labs like we've done previously. Yeah, same rules as applies to previous sessions, questions in the chat. We're going to be together for the next 3 hours. Agenda similar as what we've done in the past 2 days. So 3 hours together, 2 hours for content, labs, PowerPoint slides, what have you, an hour set aside for the exam. And so as you see here, labs, slides, lab, slides, lab, slide. So yeah, I'm just going to get into it. Let's go. Some of this is going to be a little, well, let's do this slide first. So training promotions, just as a reminder, that Uber Eats, I think everybody's taking advantage of it. I sure hope you are. If not, you're turning down a free meal, literally. So once you're done with the exam today, send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com and we'll send you that $15 Uber Eats voucher. Probably send it to you on Monday, which I guess is within 48 hours of business time. And you're entitled to, if you've joined us this whole week, 3 of these. So certainly, please take advantage of it. It's in your best interest. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in, like I said. Now, the first half of today is going to be a touch repetitive to yesterday, but if you weren't here, all the better. So if you were, I guess, sit back and just kind of hang out for a moment. And for those of you that didn't receive vouchers, the individual who's in charge of them, she just to be honest, she's on PTO right now. So we do have someone backfilling for the vouchers, but they might not be doing it as efficient a job as she is. So you might not get it until Friday, and like I said, maybe Monday. If you do want to harp on us, well, you can let us know and bug us about it. Otherwise, like I said, it should show up early next week. Good, cool. So no more vouchers. What about Cloud SIEM? So Cloud SIEM, what is it? Well, as you may know, or are going to learn right now, it's a cloud-based enterprise security information and event management system. And remember, that's where that acronym of SIEM comes from: security information and event management. And then Cloud SIEM leverages Sumo Logic's core functionality, including the data collection, the ingestion, the storage, the threat intelligence. We saw a little bit of threat intelligence yesterday with one of the examples where we looked at a threat level of an IP address. And that's all good stuff. As a reminder, Cloud SIEM is a purchased add-on with an ever-expanding library of content designed for security operations. So let's keep going here. And if you remember yesterday, which hopefully you do, wasn't that long ago, I remember this diagram. And with this diagram, and I'm going to go through it again, we concentrated really on the the bottom half of it in yesterday's call or class. And today we're going to be focusing on the top half. So as a reminder, or if you haven't seen this before, Cloud SIEM is a powerful tool. It's going to take millions of log messages, or as many log messages as you have, and funnel them down into a handful of actionable security insights. So those logs are going to be, in that first stage, collected and ingested by Sumo Logic and turned into messages. Then they're going to be parsed, parsed, mapped, and enriched into Cloud SIEM records. And here's where we picked up yesterday. Once those records are created or generated, then the records are going to be compared to rules. And if a rule is triggered, an entity will be extracted, which is that who or what did it, the IP address, the host name, what have you. That entity is extracted, that severity score is assigned, and then that signal is created. And then, as we saw yesterday, if you get enough signals together, they cluster together to form an insight, and then you can perform an actionable security investigation on it. So as a Cloud SIEM administrator, it's your job to make sure that this pipeline flows smoothly. So as mentioned, in this course, we're going to be focusing on the first part of the pipeline of how to forward your data to Cloud SIEM, how to customize the schema mappings, tuning the SOC contents to support the analysts on your SOC team. And so all these customizations, these optimizations that we're going to go through can help reduce false positives and enable your SOC analyst teammates to investigate and hunt threats faster. If you're interested in the signals and insights portion, kind of the bottom half, like I mentioned, yesterday's class is perfect for you, and that's the Cloud SIEM fundamentals. So like I said, I think everybody here attended yesterday, but if you didn't, that's fine. So I'll just make little allusions to yesterday as well. All right. And so with the scenario, we'll use Sumo Logic Coffee just for right now. We're not going to get too deep into the scenario, but essentially a company is collecting and ingesting millions of log messages into Sumo Logic, and those messages are then forwarded into Cloud SIEM. The process is set up using the Sumo Logic interface. Now, what data are you going to ingest? It's a good idea to periodically, or if it's your first time doing this, examine the data you're ingesting and send into Cloud SIEM, because as an admin, you're responsible for data ingestion. So you want to ask yourself these couple of questions. Are you ingesting enough data? Cloud SIEM is going to take thousands or millions of records and boil them down into a handful of insights. Most organizations ingest more than 50 gigs of data every day to start finding any insights. If your ingest volume is smaller than this, you may need to consider sending more data to Cloud SIEM or using other security solutions like the Threat Intel app. And we looked at the threat intelligence portion of that yesterday, on Tuesday, actually. Now, are you ingesting too much data? More data doesn't mean more insights. It's not that linear. The threat detection logic built into Cloud SIEM generally prevents false positives. However, some organizations may choose to ingest or store less data as a way to cut costs. One solution is partitioning your data into different tiers and only sending some of that data along to Cloud SIEM. Now, are you ingesting the right data? Cloud SIEM doesn't just work on quantity alone, excuse me. Quality data is going to impact your performance. As a best practice, you'll need to bring in quality data sources that are supported by Cloud SIEM, high-value data sources like CloudTrail logs, Window Events logs, AWS logs. You need to consider also whether your data is structured and has key value pairs, or is unstructured like plain text files. Most data that's ingested into Sumo Logic is semi-structured, like JSON logs, and those are the type of logs we looked at on Tuesday. Once you've answered these questions, you can assess what is working for you and what isn't working for you and your SOC team. You can then start to partition your data into Sumo Logic and forward some of this data or all of it into Cloud SIEM. I want to share, somebody asked about the slides. So I want to just share that real fast. A little bit of an interruption, but a welcome one. What I'm going to share with you. Yep, somebody else asked about the slides. So it looks like let me paste this in here. What I just pasted in, and I know you can't really see it well, is for each class we offer, the labs, the recording, and the slides for it. So for today, and I probably should have shared this with you on Tuesday, kind of didn't sort of intentionally, but so for today, where are we? We are doing Cloud SIEM administration. Here's the labs, here's the recording, and here's the slides. The recording is going to be a recent recording, obviously not this recording right now yet since it's live, but a fairly recent one. So for those of you that need those slides or want to utilize those slides, feel free to grab them. We also will send them out later. So once we'll send you a follow-up email, maybe Monday, that'll have links like this as well, but this is better to give it to you right now. So hopefully everybody saw that in the chat to get access to that. So, all right, back to the fun stuff. All right, so there we go, back to my slideshow. So what data are we ingesting? Really, it depends is what we're driving at. Now, continuing down this pipeline, after you forward your data to clouds, after you forward your data from Sumo Logic to Cloud SIEM, your log messages are going to need to go through some processing first. First, the Cloud SIEM is going to process the messages into records. The record is going to contain that information from the message, which is going to be parsed into key value pairs, mapped to the Cloud SIEM schema, and possibly enriched with other data. This process is usually automatic, but it must be completed for certain types of custom data sources. If you do need to configure log and ingest mappings, there are certain details you need to know about your data, like whether it's structured or unstructured. Does it have a syslog header? What data type is it? Is it JSON? Is it XML? Also, knowing the vendor is helpful. So Windows Events logs versus Palo Alto Firewall logs versus AWS GuardDuty logs. Once you know the details of your data, you can go ahead and consult the Sumo Logic documentation for specific help configuring your data pipeline. So based on which vendor or type of data you're utilizing, different instructions. We're going to go through one example shortly, but for other scenarios, there's other methods. And in this course, what we're going to do is we're going to but we're going to go ahead and ingest and process simple structured JSON log messages to help demonstrate the configuration process. And you'll see that in a moment. Now, this slide we looked at yesterday, but I think it's important to describe again because it's that parsing step. Then we're going to work with that today. So as a reminder, on the left-hand side of the screen, or what we're doing here is we're following a log message down the pipeline. And so on the left-hand side of the screen, you have your message, which is going to be parsed and extracted from the record. Then what's going to happen, it's going to be mapped into a set of key value pairs. And so as a reminder, this process does a few things. It fixes basic formatting. It creates semi-structured data. And so instead of us having a value of IP-127-0-0-1, which is a weird format, it gets normalized. And so the parsing step extracts the IP address, converts it into source device underscore IP equals, which is your field, and then your value is normalized to not have hyphens, but to have dots. And so 127.0.0.1. And then finally, the record is then enriched with information from match lists or threat intelligence databases such as threat level. And we'll play with that in our example as well. Once done, these normalized records are then sent down the Cloud SIEM pipeline and compared to rules. And now we're just going to finish up that pipeline. So once the record is ingested in the Cloud SIEM, it's going to be compared to those built-in and custom rules. And we talked about that yesterday, all the 600 or so rules that Sumo supplies automatically and updates them, and then your ability to create custom rules. And if a rule triggers, that entity is going to be extracted and the signal is going to be created. So when it gets triggered, that IP address, that host name, what have you, gets recorded or extracted as a product or word, and then the signal is created. If the record matches the criteria specified in the rule, then Cloud SIEM is going to create a signal and start tracking that entity. For rules to work properly and create good signals and entities, Cloud SIEM admins need to set up proper log and ingest mapping so that the important information can be extracted from the records. So you want to set things up properly. Always a good rule of thumb. All right. And then finally, this is where we focused on yesterday. Cloud SIEM takes everything one step further and starts to correlate these signals into the insights. Then we can take those insights and start to do our threat investigation. That's, once again, we focused on that in the fundamentals class. All right, so as discussed, we're really going to be focusing on the top half of that pipeline. A few more slides here before we get into our lab. These aren't too bad. But it's something we explored yesterday is the Sumo Logic UI and the Cloud SIEM UI. So I want to talk about that a little bit. And as we start to get into that, I want to talk about RBAC controls. And this, as an admin, might be quite relevant to you. All privileges for Cloud SIEM are going to be controlled in the Sumo Logic UI, which is more the traditional, the SIP environment, which we saw on Tuesday. Now, we're not really going to explore using the training admin accounts for we're not going to really use them digging deep into their accounts specifically, but it's important that you know this when you provision your SOC team with their own accounts, because what you have the ability to do, as it's showing you here on the right-hand side of the screen, is start to provide different roles with different levels of access to anything, specifically insights, content, and configuration. But within them, as you're seeing, there's many subcategories. So the most basic role in Cloud SIEM is going to be the view role. This is the level of access provided that gives view-only access to Cloud SIEM, but it is a prerequisite to all other access levels. So as an administrator or an account owner, you may want to allow some of your users to have access to Cloud SIEM, but not others. You might want some Sumo Logic admins to be Cloud SIEM admins and not others. You might want some users to be admins in Cloud SIEM, but not in Sumo Logic. And you have the ability to do this through the RBAC controls. As mentioned, we're not really going to focus on RBAC today. We focus on that in more of our Sumo administration class. This is Cloud SIEM administration, but the administration class, the regular one, goes into RBAC. It's fairly straightforward, as you're seeing on the screen. Different options, you provide them to users, and they inherit rules that limit or control their access. Now, in regards to those rules, or rather roles, we found that different levels of users need different access. Typically, Tier 1 and Tier 2 SOC analysts will also need insights for threat investigation. So they'll need that view-only access, but then also insights. But you might want to restrict that further. You might want to prevent the Tier 1 analysts from deleting insights. You might want to customize and fine-tune the insight access so that which includes things like deleting, creating, commenting, various management tasks. And so these are all configurable. In addition to access to insights for those Tier 1 and Tier 2, for Tier 2 and Tier 3 SOC analysts, you might want to include the ability for them to manage or access content. The content, as we saw yesterday, is going to give them the ability to create custom rules, custom insights, custom match lists, and other SOC content. You can fine-tune the access if you only want certain roles to create or delete or maintain certain kinds of access. Now, finally, you got your Tier 1, you got your Tier 2, mentioned Tier 3 just a moment ago, but for some Tier 3 and even SOC admins, they may need access to the configuration option. This is going to allow users to create log mappings, customize entities, and create custom actions. And then you can also customize that and fine-tune it even more. So just an overview of what can be done with the RBAC controls. And like I mentioned, that Sumo Logic administration course is really more focused on this. Although, to be perfectly honest, if you just search RBAC in the Sumo Logic documentation, you'll get all you need. It's, like I said, very straightforward, or fairly straightforward. All right, two more slides here, I think. And that's in regard to the configuration menu. There's going to be several features that are only available to administrators. And the way you can tell if you're a Google SIEM administrator with at least some configuration access is you'll see that gear or cog icon in the top pane of the Cloud SIEM UI. And you may have noticed that yesterday, may have not. And depending on the controls, you might see some or all these menu items. Full access is going to include what you see here: incoming data, entities, users, and integrations. Each of these areas allow admins to configure the data that's coming into Cloud SIEM, how the threat detection engine uses it, and how analysts can interact with the data to complete their investigations. There we go. Cloud SIEM admins may also see additional options under the content menu that other roles do not, depending on how the RBAC controls are set up. Now, in regards to training accounts for today, you're not going to see all the administration menu items. The training admin accounts we use are going to have limited access to Cloud SIEM and Sumo Logic. You're not going to be able to see the RBAC controls under administration in Sumo Logic, and under the content and configuration in Cloud SIEM, you're going to have a limited menu. Now, this is intentional and is really a good example of how you can fine-tune access, allowing some of the analysts and junior admins on your team to access only the pieces of the system they need. And so that's what we've done here is we've only given you access to stuff you need. Now, one last portion about the UIs, using that plural. As a Cloud SIEM, you're going to need admin, you're going to need to use both of them, Sumo Logic and Cloud SIEM. Even if you're focused on Cloud SIEM, you still need to be somewhat comfortable using both interfaces. So when do you use what? In a Sumo Logic UI, you're going to add collectors and data sources that can be used in Cloud SIEM. You're going to write field extraction rules that help parse your logs in Cloud SIEM. You're going to create partitions and data tiers for Sumo Logic in Cloud SIEM. Decide which data gets forwarded in Cloud SIEM. And also you can configure their users and their roles in the Sumo Logic interface. So that's where you're going to utilize the Sumo Logic UI. Now, when do you use the Cloud SIEM UI? Well, for everything else. So if you need to configure the log and ingest mappings that turn your log messages into log records, not into log records, log messages into records, that's when you'll use the Cloud SIEM UI. If you need to create custom content to help with threat investigations, like rules, match lists, and insights, you'll use the Cloud SIEM UI. If you want to customize the actions and context actions and the workflows, you'll use Cloud SIEM UI. So as you saw yesterday, we interacted with both, and we will a little bit today. And the first lab, I believe, has us kind of going through some of that. And actually, speaking of, I think we're up to lab time. Yeah, we are. So let's go ahead and a couple things here. So let me go ahead and what I want to provide to you, besides the credentials, is the lab guide we're going to use. So yesterday we used the lab guide, and today we're going to use one as well. It's actually in that link I already sent you earlier. So if you want to start ahead, you can. But let me go ahead and let's two things we got to do here. All right. So let's go ahead and log into the system. And I'll put those credentials in the chat. The credentials are different today. What we want to use for today is we want to use training plus admin number. The past few days, we've been using training plus analyst. This is training plus number. So let me go ahead and put those credentials in the chat. The password is the same. So new year 22 exclamation point. And let's go ahead and start to log in. So once again, service.sumologic.com. I sure hope you're familiar with by now. The email is training plus admin number at sumologic.com. And then the password is new year 22 exclamation point with capitals in there. You also should have that lab guide I sent. So once you have both, just hold on for a second. So let's see, I got my lab guide. I have, let me go ahead and log in, and then I think we're ready to go. So once again, any questions, please ask. Although, no, well, not although, please ask. There's no although there. All right, so let me log in. I'm still logged in as my old user. So I'm going to log out, training plus admin 234. And that password, same password, new year 22 exclamation point. All right, so just going to wait just another moment or two just for everyone to get in. You can confirm you're logged in correctly by, well, one, by being logged in, but on the bottom left, it should say training admin number. How do you log out? Great question. I'm not laughing at the question. I'm laughing at how it's not as obvious as it should be. If you're logged in as the wrong account, click on the bottom left, and then you'll have the option to sign out on the bottom left. but it is not obvious, which is, like I said, that's why I'm laughing. So training admin, sign out, and then sign in with those new credentials. All right. I'm gonna keep going here. I think we're good. Yeah, looks like pretty much everyone's good. So like I said, we should have our interface and we should have our lab guide. And so let's go ahead and start. So we're going to start with Lab 0. Lab 0 is going to be pretty straightforward. It's getting into the training environment. So congratulations, you logged in. But what we do want to do here is, as a reminder, when we log in, we want to click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise because we want to go to the Cloud SIEM Enterprise. So we're right now in the Sumo Logic UI, but that's not where we want to focus on today. If you're having problems with the credentials, try a different number, a 3-digit number. It's possible somebody else got in and messed around a little bit. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise. I am not going to bother with the password saving right now. I am, let me see, am I logged back in? I apologize. This is the same issue I did. Yes, I had to just VPN in. It's a Sumo employee thing, not a product thing. And I had done it earlier, but it kicked me out because I don't know. All right, let's try this one more time. Didn't need to close that. All right. So in Sumo, in the admin account, clicking Cloud SIEM Enterprise, and cool. Now what we should get is in Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And this should look familiar to you if you joined yesterday. As a reminder, if you didn't, this is the heads-up display of Cloud SIEM Enterprise. It's showing us the records, the insights that have occurred, the status of them, 24 hours. I think you're kind of up to speed. All right, and that's Lab 0. Now Lab 1, we're going to get a little more interesting. So I'm going to keep my lab guide probably over here. And let me just make this a little bit bigger. All right. So Lab 1. So in Lab 1, what we're going to do is familiarize ourselves with some of the features that exist for admins. Now, as mentioned, you don't have full admin rights, but you have enough to do the labs. So first, I want to point out the cog icon. I don't think I showed this yesterday. So this gives you the ability to configure things based on what access you have. So as I showed earlier, the capabilities here, there's more of them, but this is what we have for today. I also want to point out the help icon here for a few reasons. One, because help is good. So clicking on the help icon gives us a link to documentation, you see what it is here. I don't have to read the list to you, but the announcements are important. It's all important. The announcements are more important because what this is going to show you are the updates that have occurred to the rules and the mappings that Sumo Logic provides. So we've talked yesterday, we give you 600 or so rules and we update them periodically or as they need to be updated. Well, here you can see the updates. You see also how frequently we update, usually 2 or 3 times a week. And so, for somebody who knows what these are, this is going to be helpful information. But it is helpful information, period. So, all right. What else do we want to show in here? Like I said, I want to show lab wants us to show the help in the documentation. This is going to be helpful when you take your exam in a few hours. I'm sure you already have found our documentation, but just a reminder of it. And then the other thing we want to do in here, I think I did show this yesterday, or I should have, is to get back into the Sumo Logic UI. So this is where if you want to get back into Sumo, click the 3 dots, or excuse me, these are 9 dots, and switch to Continuous Intelligence Platform. And now we have 2 tabs going on, which is fine. And then we can go back into Cloud SIEM. So. All right, so not the most exciting lab to start things off, but it is getting us into the system. So I'm going to go back to the deck for a few slides. Feel free to poke around. I can't monitor what you're doing in a positive way. So, if you want to go ahead and start clicking on things, feel free to. You can't really break anything. So, but let's do let's just do a couple slides to set the stage for the lab. So lab 1, lab 0, lab 1, so lab 2. What we want to do in lab 2, or will do, and we'll want to talk about it just for just for a moment, is come on. There we go. Come on, there we go. So after you decide what data to ingest, then you can start to forward that data into Cloud SIEM. So as an admin, there's going to be several steps you need to complete in order to forward your data to Cloud SIEM. We're going to go over a high-level overview of these steps, but they're really, the specific ones are based on in the Sumo Logic documentation based on the type of data. So based on the specific type of data, there's going to be specific instructions. But for now, we're still going to go over it, kind of like I said, at a high-level overview. So first thing you need to do is request backend access or backend configuration. It's a one-time setup for Sumo Logic for us to do for you. Often the account rep actually does it ahead of time, and so it's done in the Sumo Logic UI, but we're just going to kind of assume that that's been done. Next, you're going to need to enable data forwarding. This can also be done by adding an underscore sim forward equals true when you set up a collector, and I'll show you that soon. And so for cloud data sources, you'll see that toggle checkbox as we'll do in the lab activity. It's important that you enable data forwarding each time you add a new data source into Sumo Logic. Now, finally, there we go. You need to configure the log and ingest mappings. This process is usually automatic, but must be completed for certain types of custom data sources. And this is done in the Cloud SIEM UI. We'll see an example of this shortly in the lab exercises using JSON. Right. Now, something that you need to consider before you configure your log and ingest mappings, these are some things you need to know about your data. So is your data structured or semi-structured like that JSON file, or is it unstructured like plain text? Does your data have a syslog header that can be used as a part of the parsing process? What type of data are you working with? Are you using JSON, XML, CEF, Leaf? Based on the type, there's going to be best practices for ingesting each data type. Have you pre-processed your data with Sumo Logic's field extraction rules? This can make doing so, or by setting up those field extraction rules, can make the Cloud SIEM log mapping process easier. And then I mentioned this earlier, what vendor or product is your data coming from? Is it a Windows Events Logs? Is it Palo Alto Firewall? Based on those details, then you'll consult the Sumo Logic help for the specific help you need. And I'll share the link for the help. Actually, not that. I'll share this link about how to forward the data. It's probably more information than you need, but and a question about the product. So yes, Cloud SIEM is an add-on or a separate. It's not separate price. It's separate pricing. Yeah, it is. So if you're interested in the details on how to get it, I'd consult your sales rep, account rep, things like that. That individual. If you need help locating that person, let us know as well. All right. So let's see. We got the slide. All right. Let's do this thing. What we're going to do now is twofold. We're going to enable data forwarding, and then we're going to send some data to Cloud SIEM. So let's go ahead and do so. So I'm going to go ahead and jump back into Cloud SIEM if it's still open. And I'm going to go ahead and grab my lab book, which I'm trying to bring over. Here we go. So in lab 2, we're going to need to enable data forwarding. Now we're actually going to do this. I said to jump back into Cloud SIEM. We're actually going to do this in the Sumo Logic UI. And as a reminder, to get back into the Sumo Logic UI, either you might have a tab already open, or we can go to the 9 dots. I keep saying 9 dots, and go to Continuous Intelligence Platform. But ultimately, we want to get into the Sumo Logic UI. Once we're in there, we're going to go to the far right into the black bar. Now, we're not going to click on Cloud SIEM Enterprise right now. We're going to go to Manage Data and go to Collection. And what collection is showing us are all these collectors that have been configured to bring data into Sumo Logic. So here you see some observability data and all kinds of data. There's a lot of test data in here. The CloudTrail data is in here and many other sources of data. Now, what we want to do is we want to find a collector that we've set up today for training purposes. And that collector, it should be the very first one on the list, but it should be. And it's called admin-training-sim. So hopefully you see this collector in your Sumo Logic training environment. If you do, or hopefully you do, oh wait, let me see here. Oh wait, we modified something. Yeah, yours are grayed out as well. Why are they grayed out? I am thinking. Let me. I can correct this. Yeah, give me a moment here. I apologize. That's oh, I shouldn't have signed out. Yeah, I can just give access. I don't know. So one moment. I do apologize for this, but timing wise, we're still a little ahead on time, so it shouldn't impact anything too bad. So let's see, what am I going to do? I'm actually going to use RBAC. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the roles, and I'm going to go into the training admin account that we're using. And I'm not going to do that. I am going to give you guys manage collector access. Now you might have to log back in to get the access. Let me see. Let me let it save first. Kind of tap dancing here. It's hitting a lot of users, as you can see. Okay, cool. Looks like it's done. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to go back into my training admin account using the 3 number. Okay, cool. Thank you for the confirmation, everybody. Real-time feedback is nice. No. Okay. Cool. So apologize for that. So long story short, we should be back in the collection screen, and we should now be able to edit the collector. So, actually, that's not specifically what we want to do. So what we want to do is we want to go to the collector, and we want to go to the line that says add source. We need to choose the source. What type of data are we going to be playing around with today? For today, we're going to be keeping it kind of simple and just using HTTP logs and metrics, but based on the source of data, we would choose the appropriate one. Now here, we're going to fill in the blanks a little bit. We're going to give the rule or the source a name. So as we've been doing previously, we want to use a naming convention that has our initials in it and a number, which makes it easier for me to clean up later. Data, JB234. What else are we going to specify in here? There are other things we could, like description, but we're not going to bother. Source category we are going to use. So we want to give the source category a name. As it shows in the example, and previously we've used more dynamic names that have more structure to them, like Labs, AWS, CloudTrail. For today, we're just going to use a simple one. So I'm just going to use training JB. So first, just training and then initials. Now, I had mentioned that box of SIM processing that needs to be checked, and that's right here. So I'm going to go and check that. And that's about it that I'm going to do on this screen. Now, there are other things I could do. We won't today, and we do get into these more in the admin class, the regular admin, but we could start to do things like timestamps. Maybe we want to enforce a specific time zone, other processing rules, but just it's not relevant for right now. So what I'm going to do is just click save. If I did everything correctly, even if I didn't do everything correctly, I should get a URL. What I want to do is I want to copy this URL or keep it handy, I guess. Yeah, I'm going to copy it just to put it someplace. No place fancy. I'm just going to keep it right there. But because we're going to use this URL in a moment, and you can actually leave it on the screen. You just don't click OK. The next steps we're going to do, we don't need. We can leave the screen up. All right. So that's where we should be at the end of lab 2, is we should now have our source created and a URL somewhat handy. Now let's go ahead and go into lab 3. And what we're going to do in lab 3 is we're going to send a log message to Cloud SIEM. So we're going to send a simple log, a simple JSON message using a command interface, or a terminal interface, rather, excuse me. And so that's what we're going to do right now. What we want to do is we want to open up a command line interface. So something like terminal, something like PowerShell. If you don't have one handy or can't access it, it's okay. You might not be able to do this lab or the next one, but it's not the end of the world. You're still going to see what's going on the screen. I'll be doing it, but hopefully you can participate. It makes it a little more fun. So what I want to do is I want to get a terminal window going. And I want to go ahead and paste the command, or copy and paste the command that is in the PDF. Now, this is going to be another example where the pasting might not be as smooth as it should be. It might add, and I think it is adding an extra space here between the 2 lines. So I will want to clean this up. The other thing I want to do with this command line, or with this command, is modify it. So I want to modify it in a few different ways. There's going to be a portion here that says attacker name. In quotes, I want to put a name. I can use my initials. I can create something funny. I'm not really feeling very funny right now, so I'm just going to call it JB attack. But you could put something in there. And then the other portion that we want to do in here is put the source URL, this URL that I alluded to a moment ago. We want to paste that into our interface. So where we have at the very end of the line, this HTTP source URL, I want to go ahead and paste in that actual URL. And so what's going to happen when I click enter? I'm going to do right and ingest. And if data forwarding is enabled, which it should be, it's going to be forwarded into Cloud SIEM, and we're going to see that in Cloud SIEM. Now, when we go to see it in Cloud SIEM in a few moments, it's going to take a little while, up to 15 minutes, but we're going to go through some things up until then. It may show an error, and we'll get into why it's showing an error. So don't get too worried. But let's go ahead and see if the log message is in there. Once again, it might take up to 10 minutes. So I have some slides to kind of fill the time, but let's go ahead and see if it's in there. So what I want to do is I want to go back into Cloud SIEM. Oops, that's not Cloud SIEM. Just if I don't have Cloud SIEM open, go into Cloud SIEM Enterprise. And I want to go to the records. So up on the top, records. And I want to, a couple different ways that you can approach this. You could just do a search. Well, no, actually, the way the guide recommends it, let's search on the metadata. So what we want to do is we want to choose the source. So I'm going into my filter. And I'm choosing, what am I choosing? I am choosing a metadata source. So I'm going to type source just to get the key keywords to highlight. So I'm going to select this metadata source category is, and then I'm going to specify the source category I defined, which I think was that. Pretty sure it was. When I click enter, it may not get it there right away, so that's okay. So the fact that there's no data yet is fine. Like I said, it takes a few minutes, so don't worry yet. But what I want to do now is I do want to just periodically kind of check it. Now, while it's doing this, like I said, I'm going to continue and do some other stuff. So we're not just sitting here clicking refresh for the next 15 minutes. So let me go back to my slides and let me refresh because I do want to see it. All right. So let's see, what slides do I have in the meantime? Actually, let's see. Let's see, is it coming back yet? All right, still not there. And if yours do come back, if you can let me know, that's great. Someone was getting let's see, getting an error with the curl command. I am not an expert in curl, so I'm going to assume there's a typo, but that's not a good assumption. So I'm not exactly sure why you're getting that error for curl. Yeah, I don't, I'm not sure. Let's see. All right, cool. Mine came back actually. Good. Have any of yours come back yet? And it should. If mine did, then yours should shortly. We say up to 15 minutes, but I guess the system's running quicker today. So ultimately, what we should see at the end of this lab is a message, a record. Here's my record. Here I see information that was in my record, such as the event ID, and or but I see that it failed. Now, it failed intentionally, and that's what I was trying to allude to earlier, and it says in the lab, the record failed because the JSON log message does not have any log or ingesting mapping associated with it. The log message was forwarded to Cloud SIEM, but since there was no mapping, it could not successfully parse and pull these pieces of information out. So for example, in that log message, we had the attacker, what I put, training JB attack or something. Well, why isn't that in here? Because we don't have the mapping set up for it. What we're going to do next is set up that mapping and then re-ingest these messages, and then we should see some added information. So that's where we're headed. So let's keep going. It looks like a bunch of you got your messages on time, or not on time, but got them, which is good. Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, let's do lab 4. So we'll probably do, let's see, time-wise, just want to make sure. We'll be out of here a little bit early today. Let's go ahead and do lab 4 now. So with lab 4, what we want to do is we want to set up that ingest mapping. We know data is coming into Sumo logic now, or hopefully if your curl command worked properly, but now we want to set up that mapping so that the message is not failed, but comes in properly and gets routed and parsed out appropriately. So how are we going to do this? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use, and this is lab 4 once again, we're going to use the cog icon on the top right, and we're going to choose integration, and we're going to choose Sumo logic. So cog, integration, Sumo logic. Now in Sumo logic, we now see all the ingest mappings that have been created or have been created. Most of these are automatic ones. Some of these are for testing, but we're going to create our own now. So to create one, click on the create button. We want to identify the source category. So hopefully you remember what you used. We want to specify the format. So based on the format of the message will be processed differently. And so in this case, we want to use JSON because that's the format we're using. Now the vendor and the product, we're going to go ahead and put something in here. We're going to use our initials once again and just do called vendor JB and then product JB. And then finally, what else do we need? Event ID we don't need. We can leave that blank. But finally, we want to enable it. So we can create this rule, but until we enable it, it's not doing anything. So I want to do something, so I'm going to turn it on, and then I'm going to click create. If I did it properly, it should now show up on the list, and the list should be longer. And there I see some of you guys. So cool. All right. So now we have our ingest mapping occurring. Now, still one more mapping we need to do, and that's going to be the log mapping. And the log mapping is going to ensure that it's used, that the ingest mapping is being used properly. So now let's go ahead and go to the configuration icon again. And this is lab 5. This time, though, we're going to go to log mappings. Once again, we're going to see what's actively in the system already. Tons of mappings already created, but we want to create a new one. When we create a new one, we need to know or decide what type of data we're using, structured or unstructured. Semi-structured is considered structured. So we'll go ahead and use the structured mapping. And then, as we did yesterday, we're going to kind of, well, as we've been doing today, we're going to fill in the blanks. And essentially, we have our left and not essentially, we do have the left and the right-hand side of the screen, the if and the then. So what needs to occur if this happens, then this type of record will be created. And now we're going to fill in the blanks. So if the input matches, well, we want to match a log from the vendors that we were using. So we want to use that vendor JB and product JB. And of course, in the real world, we could specify CloudTrail, Microsoft, whatever it might be. Product JB. So we're looking for those logs. They need to have those two products. And it has to be in a specific format. And the format we want is JSON. Once again, we want the right format. For the event ID matches the regex, we can just go ahead and put a star here, or actually a period star. And then what else do we need to do? We need to do the create record here. So what we need to do is, so we have our left-hand side of the screen. Then before we select the record of type, we're actually going to go to the vendor and specify that vendor that we're using. Should be able to. Why is it not? What did I do wrong? Let's see, I'm gonna leave the record of type blank for now. Under if input matches. Let's see. Pulling it in there. Oh, the matching input. I also need to give this thing a name as well. Okay. Matching input. There we go. There we go. And then the fields. So sorry, I'm sorry, it's been a little while since I did this. So what we're doing is we're doing the input matches, and then we're doing the vendor using the matching input vendor. So basically, it's going to take that vendor name and just carry it over when it creates the records. But we need to create our fields. So the fields that we want to create here are going to be those fields that are going to be in that JSON record. In that JSON record, there's currently 2 fields that we're interested in: the IP, which is going to be that 127.0.0.1, and then the threat name, which is going to be, I think I called mine attack JB or something like that. And so we want to extract those. And so that's what we're defining right now. So to do so, we go into the fields, and we're going to enter the fields that we want to use. So the first field I want to use is IP. And what I can do over here is I can specify the output field. So I have many I can choose from. I'm going to use one that's standardized in device_IP. And then I'm going to click add field. It's going to bring it down to the portion down below. And now I'm going to do the same thing with threat name. Now for threat name, what I'm doing here is I'm saying, take the word or the string threat name. And you know what? I want to output to the field of threat _name. Why? I don't know if I need a good reason, but that's the naming convention we use. We don't use like kind of camel case like that. We use underscores. And so now I'm specifying that. Once I've done so, or done so correctly, hopefully, I should have the two fields that I just created down below. Now, I can't submit yet, and that's good because the system's reminding me, hey, there's still one step I need to do. And so now let's go ahead and do that step, and that's step 12. So what we're going to do is we're going to scroll up to the screen, up to the top of the screen, excuse me. We're going to select the record of type, and we're going to choose authentication here. And it's a weird, I think it mentions it in the lab. Yeah, it's a weird kind of, not a workaround, but a way to not limit the fields is choosing the record of type after you put the fields. And yeah, this is essentially the normalization of the fields, exactly. So it's now going to take anything it finds in that IP field or spot and call it device underscore IP equals 127.0.0.1 or what have you. So, yep. All right, we're going to click submit now. Let's see, so mine created properly. What's it doing? I already submitted it. It should, let me just make sure. So if I go back to my log mappings, let's see. Okay, cool, there it is. I'll just make sure this is right. Yeah, okay, so there's mine. So hopefully you see yours. Let's see, if you're getting an error, the error should specify what to some degree is missing. So if you do have that orange triangle, it should vaguely tell you what's wrong. Not always as helpful as it could be. Oh, okay, good. It was helpful. Cool. All right, so let's see. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do lab 6, and then we're going to take a break. So with lab 6, what we're going to basically do, not basically do, we are going to do is resend that log message. However, this time it should now be received properly. So very simply for lab 6, we're going to rerun the terminal command, and then we're going to take a break. So while it processes, we'll take a 10-minute break. Then when we come back, we should see that message processed properly, and then we'll do a few more labs and get you out of here. So we're taking a break a little bit early, but I think you won't mind too much. So let's go ahead and do lab 6 together. But like I said, it's very simply just taking that curl command we used earlier and resending it, assuming you're sent properly earlier. If you had a problem, you'll have a problem again. But what I'm doing now is rerunning this. And now when I go into records, I should see 2 records. My one that happened earlier that did not process properly, and now the one that does. So I'm going to run this, and now we're going to take a break. Certainly, if you want to check in the records, but I don't want to, like I said, I don't want to keep us here looking for a specific record. So we're going to, like I said, we'll do that break now. So we'll do a 10-minute break again. That's been working out well. So I'm going to start that. All right, so 10-minute break, then we'll come back. While the clock is running, though, I am going to just kind of keep an eye on this record to see if it's coming through or not. Actually, you know what? I'm going to take a break with you. So we'll come back in 10 minutes, and we'll see. Hopefully, our records are there, and then we'll do a few more labs. So thank you, everybody. If there's any questions, throw them in the chat, and then we'll come back. So speak to you all in a few minutes. All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you're having a good break that's just about wrapping up. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our timer. And so what I want to do now is I want to go back into Cloud SIEM. Now, you might have gotten logged out of Cloud SIEM. We haven't used it potentially, and you might not have been in it recently, so you might have gotten kicked out. But ideally, what you should be able to do is look for your source category. Also, make sure you increase the timestamp. By default, we're looking at the last 15 minutes, but when we sent that first message, that was now a long time ago. So I'm going to do last 60 minutes. But ultimately, what you should see are two log messages. The first one being the bottom one being the failed record, and then top one being a accepted record. And the portions that we see here that are being extracted for us or parsed out for us are the device IP, the classification, the authentication. We remember we selected that option, and then the threat name being whatever I chose. And so we go from having just a log message come through to a log message that has been normalized and has fields extracted. And now we can go ahead and use those fields. So hopefully you got there. If you didn't, hopefully you got to look along. If you're having problems with the curl command, we're just not experts at I'm not an expert at curl, so I can't help too much. And if you're using PowerShell, I'm even less of an expert there, but hopefully at least conceptually you got it. If you're having any issues, feel free to just try it again. Create a, if you want to really start from scratch from the beginning, most likely it's going to be, well, I don't want to guess what might be wrong, but it should work, of course. All right. So what we're going to do, I'm going to go back to the slide deck just for a second, and then we're going to get back into the labs and not wrap things up. Get close. So let me get back to the deck. What I want to go over now is, and we kind of went through some of this yesterday. Not kind of, we did. Let's see. So I'm going to go through this piece by piece. Let me go. Let's go. All right. So what are Cloud SIEM rules? Now, we talked about these yesterday, and hopefully you're comfortable with them now or aware of them now. But the rules, remember, are going to be really the most important pieces of Cloud SIEM's threat detection engine. All the records that are going to be ingested into Cloud SIEM are going to compare to every rule in Cloud SIEM. And remember, if there's a match, an entity will be extracted and a signal will be created. And then those entities, things like IP addresses, host names, are going to be tracked and may correlate with other signals and create an insight. And that's where those threat investigations begin, is with those insights. And that's kind of where we focused on yesterday. But as a Cloud SIEM admin, you're going to have the ability to create any rule type. And so SOC analysts on your team or just other people who might not have privileges might ask you to create custom rules. So we want to go through some of those custom rules. Now, we did look at some of these yesterday, but we're going to look at some different ones today. As a reminder, you don't have to write the rules from scratch. We give you a bunch. You see them in the announcements page of all the different updates. And so there's 4 main type of rules. The match rule, going to be that simple rule. Does it match an IP? Yes or no, a simple Boolean, almost binary true false statement. A threshold rule, that's going to be where something is triggered and a match is found after a certain number of times. And so we're going to play with this rule in a few moments. And so, for example, if we have where 1 failed login attempt is acceptable, but 5 failed login attempts under an hour is not acceptable, we could fire a rule after that 5th login attempt occurs, or attempt occurs, rather. So that's a threshold rule. The chain rule, these are going to allow you to chain events together. So if you have certain events that happen in a certain time window, chain rules are going to be perfect. If you want to look up 5 failed login attempts followed by 1 successful login attempt, that's where a chain rule comes in. And then we have the aggregation rules, which I mentioned yesterday, we don't use too much, and I don't think we're going to be using them today. But as a reminder, what they allow you to do is get triggered when many, up to 6 different events, there we go, occur or accumulate over time. So if you want to write a rule that looks for a large number of event types from a single IP address, aggregation rules are appropriate. But like I've said, we don't use them much. All right. And so this we looked at already. This is a reminder, it's just a rule template. You're going to fill in the left, you're going to fill in the right. You have your if, you have your then, and so we'll go ahead and do that in just a moment. All right, let's go back into the lab. Let's create some rules. The rest of the slides don't really see. Yeah, we don't really need the rest of the slides. So let's get back into the lab book. So I'm going to go back into Sumo. Hopefully I still have my window open. And I'm going to grab my lab book right here. And I'm going to go ahead and we should be on lab 7. So in lab 7, what we're going to do is we're going to write a threshold rule, which we did not do yesterday. I don't believe we did. So let's go ahead and take a look at creating a threshold rule. So we're going to go ahead and go, as we did yesterday, we're going to go to content and we're going to go to rules. And now we're looking at, once again, all the rules that have been provided to us or that we've created. So this yesterday, I think this was 613. Today it's higher because we as a group have been creating rules. So that's what we're seeing in here. Now we want to create a new rule. Now, what type of rule do we want to create? Well, we want to create a threshold rule. And what we want to do here, I keep forgetting to read kind of the preface of the lab, although I'm sure you are. What the goal of this lab is with the threshold rule is we want to create a rule that's going to look for 3 unique Windows event IDs that are related to failed logins within an hour. So we want to create a rule that's going to look for 3 of these distinct IDs during a specific time period. And that's where a threshold rule is going to allow us to do this, because we want to look for a count given within a time period. So we're going to click create under threshold. We're going to give it a name. So as we've been doing, giving it that name of our and I'm not worrying about, now I'm worried about it. Okay. And now we're going to fill in the blanks. So we need to figure out what needs to occur. And then if that does occur, what kind of signal needs to be created. And so the orange at the bottom is letting us know we need to fill in these following fields, and the fields we need to follow are in the lab. So we're going to go ahead and enter them from the lab and paste them into the UI. There may be some issues with, once again, where we have to redo some of the apostrophes just because they don't paste properly from PDF, but we'll kind of stumble across that as we get to it. So we have our name, we have it enabled. We want to utilize this show advanced option. And what we want to use under the show advanced is the count only distinct values for our field. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. So that's going to look for distinct values. Now the distinct value or the expression that we want to look for is going to be this metadata device ID equals 4625. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have to redo these apostrophes. When I do the apostrophes correctly, the whole thing, or at least the numbers, should appear in red. And that's, like I said, just an artifact of PDFs. So now we're looking for if the device ID matches 4625. Now, how many records do we want to match? Do we want to look for just 1 match? Do we want to look for 2 matches? Do we want to look for 10 matches? No, we want to look for 3 matches. What field do we want to match on? Device IP. I said that like it's obvious. It might not be, but that's the field we want to use. That's going to be the entity. And then what time range do we want to look for 3 values? 5 minutes? No, we want to look for 1 hour. Now that we have our if completed, now we can do our then. So if all this stuff on matches and there's 3 IPs with that event ID, 3 event IDs within an hour, we're going to pull out the device IP. And then what are we going to do with that? Well, what we're going to do is create a signal based on the entity being the device IP. We can go ahead and do our summary and description, but I'm going to leave them blank for now. No real reason to fill them out. We can specify our severity. So what score do we want to have triggered or occur if this rule creates a signal? 7 doesn't, doesn't matter, of course, but it does matter, of course, but for us, it doesn't right now. And I can't save yet. I still have 2 things to do. The description does need to have something in here. I forgot that it is required. And then we want to specify our tag. And so we can go ahead and specify a tactic or technique using initial access. The last thing we want to do here, this is really just the best practice, is clicking the checkbox to save this as a prototype. And once we have that, we then click submit. We should be brought back to this screen, which is confirming this screen. This is showing the details of the rule we created. And then if we want to confirm the rule exists, although this is a pretty good confirmation on this screen, we can go to content, we can go to rules, and we should now start to see our rules in here. Okay, let's do lab 8. Let's create a chain rule next. Now, in this next example, what we want to do is we want to use a chain rule. And the reason we want to use a chain rule versus a match rule or a threshold rule is we want to look for, in a chain of events, a successful login that occurs after a bunch of failed logins. So what we want to do is we want to look for 10 failed logins, a successful login from the same IP address within 5 minutes. So now our criteria is a little tighter. Previously, it was just an IP event ID that happened within an hour 3 times. Now we're looking for failed logins and a successful login during a time period. So more things going on. So to create the chain rule, click create, click chain, and now kind of fill in the blanks again. So we're going to specify our rule name. We're going to specify the if portion. So what needs to occur? Well, in this case, 2 things need to occur. The first is going to be in step 6A, which is going to be this, this line of authentication being false. So here we see authentication. Was it successful? No, or false. I'm also going to go ahead and grab the next line, which is, hold on. There. Okay. I'm going to do the next line, which is going to be authentication successful true. Now, do we just want to trigger if there's 1 false and 1 true? We could, but that's not what we want to do. We want to look for 10 falses and 1 true. Now we're going to group it by the entity field, and we want to specify the time range. So do we care about the order? Well, in this case, we do care about the order. If we didn't care about the order, if we wanted to look for 3 falses, 1 true, and then 6 more or 7 more falses, we could say any order. But for us, the exact order matters. We want to look for 10 fails and then 1 true. We're very specific. And then we could be more specific with our time. Although this is specific enough, we could modify the time, but we won't. Now what we want to do is do the then. So if this matches, that a signal is going to be created. So now let's, once again, just kind of fill in the blanks. We want to specify the entity of the device IP. The description we need to put in, just as we found earlier, that's a required field. We can specify our severity. We can specify our tags. And then, once again, rule as a prototype and submit it. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead. Any questions? I think we're pretty good. There was a question. The category is kind of a Zeek log. Yes, although my Zeek information is very limited, so I believe so. But yeah, it's a. I'm not going to. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. All right, let's do lab 9. Let's Yeah, we're a little ahead of time, schedule, but this is good. So with Lab 9, what we want to show is customizing the actions button. We looked at yesterday, or I at least showed, I don't think we utilized, but we showed yesterday the actions feature. But what we want to give you the ability here is to create your own actions so that you can customize this to help your team. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a custom action. So to do so, we're going to go to the configuration of the cog icon. And this time we're going to select actions under integrations. We see the actions that are predefined, or yeah, these are predefined, I guess, is a fine way to say it. But we can also create more, and that's what we're going to do right now. So to create one, I think you're getting the idea of it. Click create. We're going to need to give it a name. So I'm going to use the naming convention that we encourage you to use. We would want to make these notifications on demand. We do have the ability to not, but for this exercise, we want to make them on demand. We want to make them active. And then what type of notification do we want to utilize? We have a wide variety in here. And for this one, what we're going to do is we're going to use email. So what we want to do is, the idea here is we want to create a custom action that is going to email a specific either individual or group. In this case, it will be a group email. So we would specify, what do we call it? Incident response at Sumo Logic Coffee. Once again, harkening back to that coffee example that we kind of used a little bit. And so then we'll create that. Pretty straightforward. I mean, you know, very straightforward. And then when we click create, now we should be able to utilize this. So what we want to do now is, one, we should see this on the action screen. And now if we go to an insight, we're going to pick any one. It doesn't really matter which one. So I'm in my insights. And like I said, I'm just going to pick one. And when I go to my actions, I should see mine as well as everybody else's. And so now if I want to send this to the incident response team, and then I could, you know, maybe close it or not, depending on what the playbook kind of says. But that's creating an insight, creating an action. So very simple to do, but quite helpful in streamlining your options of what your SOC analysts can do, so that they can very easily send something to a group or whomever might need it. So, all right. That primarily finishes the class. Yeah, that's really one more. No, we did this. Actually, let's just go through this slide real fast of just some other customizations, but this will just be about it, and then we'll wrap up. So other customizations that are available to you, and we kind of just did them. But so creating these sometimes requires admin level privileges. So the match list, that customization is really helpful, so that you can create a group of entities that Cloud SIEM uses in the rules. It's going to be similar to an allow list or a deny list. Cloud SIEM comes with match lists, but you can create more, and we experienced one previously. You can customize your insights. Now, we talked about yesterday the fact that the default clustering of entities occurs when there's an activity score of 12 or over 12, well, 12 or above, within a 14-day period. But that's customizable. You can increase or decrease the time frame. You can increase or decrease the activity score threshold. You can create custom insights so that when those certain rules are triggered, or they are triggered regardless of their severity scores, just, you know, many options. The actions, that's what we just went over, the ability for you to create those custom actions. We used email, but certainly many others, such as ones that are listed below, can be enabled. Well, you saw how to enable those. And then finally, workflows. So we didn't we talked about a little bit of this, where the admins can create the custom workflows. So by default, you can mark an insight as new or in progress or closed, but with custom workflows, you can add a new status. Maybe you want to add a status for those insights where an analyst is digging deeper to find a root cause. Maybe you want to create a custom workflow or essentially a status called investigating, different from in progress. You can do so. So more control, the better. All right. And then those labs that we did. All right, so let's go ahead and let's do the exam. We're up to that time. Like I said, we're a little early, but that's fine by me. So what we're going to do is, as a reminder, we want to make sure that we log out of the training account. We don't want training admin to get credit for the exam. We want you as a specific person, as an entity, to get credit for the exam. So you're going to want to make sure that you log out and then log back in with your corporate or your professional account. And I'll do that just to do it with you. So I'll go ahead and log in with mine. And most likely it's going to be the same account you've been using for the past 3 days. If you're new, of course, you haven't been playing with us, but if you have, you kind of know the deal of what we're doing. Oops, typos all over the place. There we go. So you're going to log in. You're going to go to certification and you're going to choose get certified. Once you're in here, you'll choose get certified. And then you're going to choose the class. And so today we're doing the admin exam, Cloud SIEM administration exam. Sorry, let me be more specific. And so then you'll start it. Same rules apply as previously. Let's see. So 20 questions, you'll have 60 minutes to take it. As you've seen, you don't need that much time, but you have it allocated. So of course, feel free to use it. 70 to pass. And once again, this is open resource. So use that documentation. Once again, you have it. So I think you should use it. Let's see, other than that, that's really about it. So I'll put up the reminder of the Uber Eats, because get your food, you deserve it. Thank you for attending. Hopefully you enjoyed some of these sessions over the past few days. We'll have more coming. And so we'll be sending out emails about the next round of classes probably in February, which is really soon. So we'll have some more classes for you next month. But once again, thank you again. I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm going to step away just to get a little snack real fast, but I'll be around while you take the exam. And start with the flow diagram. Let's see. This is the request for this diagram. I think this is the one that is being requested. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I'll leave this one up for a little bit, and then let me put in real fast. I'm going to put this in the chat about the training promotion, so you get your Uber Eats. And then I'm going to leave this flow diagram, which was helpful yesterday as well. So I'll leave it up again. One, because somebody asked, and two, because it is helpful to have. So yeah, let's go ahead and start the exam. I'm going to come back in a few minutes and check in on you guys. But thank you again for attending. And yay, Sumo. So good luck, everybody.